Discover the world's greatest comics and games at House of Heroes in downtown Oshkosh. Since 1995, House of Heroes has provided Northeast Wisconsin with the most spectacular selection of comic books and graphic novels. Everybody has an inner nerd. Discover yours at House of Heroes.
Selina Kyle, Catwoman, has been in prison for the last 10 years and she's just been let out. It was after an event called Fool's Night, which took the lives of the Joker, the Batman, and Gordon. And Selina gets out and comes back to a Gotham City she barely recognizes because it's been locked down. The city has focused on crime and safety and also probably given up some privacy and civil liberties as well. So she has to come back and figure out her place in this new Gotham City. And this is a smaller story about character, and it's about the people who aren't necessarily the big names, the stars, and seeing how, as they get older, how do they adapt to the times? How do they adapt to this new city? Specifically, the lens of Selina getting older. The world is not kind and certainly does not treat women fairly, and that's probably even more evident as they get older. Yeah, there's always a saying that Gotham is like this other character, in the Batman books, and part of what I wanted to explore is how, we take these things and look at them from a more adult perspective. So Gotham here is very much an American city with all the problems that our cities have. So I wanted to take a look at that and see how it impacts, the people of Gotham, and then also the heroes and villains. Uncomfortably, the city is different. After suffering so much on Fool's Night, the city has changed, and they've opted for safety over everything else. So there are no more costumes, there's no more superheroes or supervillains, but there are lots of police on the streets, armed police. And Selina has to come back and see where she fits in as a career criminal. What can she do now? And what is her life like? And also just kind of building back after losing someone, she thought maybe she was going to spend the rest of her life with. So it's a tough situation for her to be in. And, having spent the last 10 years in prison, I think her life was very much on hold. And then now she's actually having to deal with all the repercussions. I've spent most of my career working with DC, and it's such a comfortable place for me. I know everybody, I love the characters, and to be given the amount of creative freedom that we have with Black Label is just, it's unbelievable. I was talking with my friend Jock, and we were just amazed at how much we're able to do and how lucky we are. I love it. I used to work at DC as an assistant editor, and I felt like I got a good idea of what everybody's job was, but getting a chance to do all of it really gives me a really fine control over the storytelling, just little nuances, even just moving a balloon here or there, or being able to adjust color palettes in a scene. I love it. Although, there's some times when I feel like one of those ridiculous one-man bands with like a drum on my back and like a harmonica and a guitar. But it's great. In the first issue, for sure, we have an appearance by Killer Croc, and he certainly becomes like one of my favorites to write. There's just kind of a lovable goofiness about him. There's a tragedy, about him as well, as he's gotten older and doesn't have, anybody to work for, not quite smart enough to be the boss. You just want better for him. But at the same time, he's such a lovable goof and kind of a dummy. So he's great to write, and I hope the readers love him as much as I do.
Tampered with the stability of space-time. The multiverse is a concept about which we know frighteningly little. Your desecration of reality will not go unpunished. It was the only way. But I never meant for any of this to happen. Wanda.
I knew sooner or later you'd show up. I made mistakes, and people were hurt.
I'm not here to talk about Westview.
Then what are you here for?
I need your help.
With what?
What do you know about the multiverse? I'm sorry, Stephen.
I hope you understand. The greatest threat to our universe is you.
Things just got out of hand.
Boyd from OnStar. I got a signal your airbag went off. Should I send for an ambulance?
Everything's fine. Send the police to 4th and Main.
I'll contact him right away.
He'll never learn.
When I got the call from DC Comics to write Batman, the ongoing series, it was super surreal. I've wanted to write Batman my whole life. You know, it's definitely been a very big dream of mine. You know, I have a Batman tattoo. You know, it's always been something I wanted to do. And I've gotten the opportunity to work on Batman a few times. I've actually gotten to write on this Batman series since Rebirth. It was just something that was really important to me. And so when I got that call, I couldn't wait to get started on working, you know, and immediately diving into it and thinking about the world. And like that night, I went and I watched the first Batman movie, the 1989 one, just to kind of remind myself of something of you know, why I love Batman. So it was very, very surreal, but at the same time, I was just so excited to get to work, like just to dive right in and get to writing. If you've been reading Batman recently or have been reading Batman recently, it was important to me that both those things were taken care of here. That I honored what James had been doing before in the book for the last 2 years, but then I also wanted to make sure that if you hadn't been reading it, you could just jump right into it. You know, part of the story is that we're coming out of Fear State, which is a big Batman event, and afterwards, you know, Gotham's gone through a bit of a change. They've all kind of survived this Scarecrow attack. And so the city is sort of changed, and Batman sees that. And because of the events of Fear State, Batman is actually leaving Gotham for a bit. And so it gives us kind of a point of a new story, of a new case, of Batman being able to leave Gotham and you're able to pick it up there. So it allows you, if you're coming into it new, you get to have kind of a new case and a new adventure. So keeping James's run in mind, I think one of the things that James really brought to it was a lot of excitement, and he really brought a lot of new things to it, new characters, new ideas, and new toys. And so I wanted to keep that running. I wanted to be able to still introduce new characters, like we're introducing this new villain whose name is Abyss, and we're going to go play with some new toys in the DCU with Batman. But I also wanted to bring Bruce back into the main DCU and start having interact with different pieces of DCU we haven't seen in a while. And then for me, you know, one of the things with James's run was and this goes back to James' detective run too. It's like it's Bruce plus a major supporting cast of characters. You know, you had Ghostmaker and Punchline and Harley, and I wanted to keep some of that running, but I wanted to get back into Bruce's head and spend some time with just Batman and make sure everything was through his point of view. And that was one of the ways I was going to kind of depart from what he was doing and take it on my own spin, was to make it much more about just Batman by himself on this adventure. So with this new run, like I said before, we're introducing this new villain. Their name is Abyss. See, for me, it's always been interesting of how Batman uses the darkness and shadows to, he uses them as a weapon against people. And so I started thinking, what if somebody figured out how to use that against Bruce, against Batman? And so that's where we started developing Abyss as a character who also learns how to use the darkness, but also can take the way Batman uses it, learn from it, and then turn it around and use it as a weapon against him. They have a really fun character, and the way we're doing their powers is super different. So it's going to be really interesting. And then Jorge Molina, who came in and got to do a new design for this character and really just kicked butt with it. I think with Jorge, he brings a kind of calm horror and tension to it. I've been a fan of Jorge's Molina's for a long time. I actually recommended Jorge years ago because Jorge would do all these like awesome pinups of Batman online. And so I started like showing that work to DC and being like, this guy should do Batman someday. This guy should do Batman someday. And sure enough, the day that they call me to do Batman, they're also like, oh, Jorge's going to do it. So it all just kind of came together. When I was recommending him for that job, it wasn't for me. It was just I thought he would do a really great job with that character. And sure enough, I got lucky and he gets a job with me. And so far, like the thoughtfulness that he puts into Gotham, into the characters, and into kind of this energy of Gotham and Batman, and just bringing so much to it.
Hey Spidey, isn't Marvel's new Pizzazz magazine fantastic?
Fantastic, but not perfect.
But Pizzazz has the lowdown on Jaws too, and more Sean Cassidy picks than his mother. It's sensational.
Sensational, but not perfect.
How about Pizzazz's Goofy Guide to TV? It's wild look at sci-fi movies. It's games, puzzles, comics. What could be more perfect?
Me on the cover, not the Hulk.
Pizzazz, the almost perfect new monthly from the off-the-wall gang at Marvel Comics.
She was a bad bad, nevertheless. Calling it quits now, baby, I'm a wreck. Crash at my place, baby, you're a wreck. Every time I'm leaving, oh, you don't make it easy, no.
Miles!
Wish I could be
Miles! Miles! You got a minute?
Oh! What? Whoa, Gwen? How did you get... How have you been?
It's a long story. Is this the room you grew up in?
It is, but my dorm room is very adult.
Right. No, of course.
Hey!
Are these your drawings?
What? No,
Oh,
no.
they're good.
I missed you too.
Okay. So, what are you doing here? I mean, I thought I'd never see you again.
Want to get out of here?
I'm grounded.
Bummer.
What?
Is Spider-Man grounded?
I mean, I
Hello. Gotham Corner Store? Yes, we seem to be down to our last Diet Coke. A gentleman is on his way to pick some up. Just look for a black car. No, this black car will be rather difficult to miss. And by the way, the gentleman is usually in quite a rush.
Just for the taste of it, Diet Coke.
It explores his relationship with Bruce, and not just Bruce, but Alfred, and you'll see we introduce a lot of people, and it comes down to it kind of like it takes a village to raise a child. In this case, it does take an entire league to kind of raise Robin and make him who he is, and that's what I felt was really charming about this story, and you know, a lot of it's heartbreaking, but a lot of it is it makes Robin who he is. Bruce is the way he is because of the people he surrounds himself, you know, his family or lack thereof, you know, his allies, his enemies, his sidekicks. You know, you see that about Batman. But this story, I feel like Jeff and I, we really made it where everyone else is the way they are because of Batman and not the other way around. And I think it centers everything around Robin, because the book is about Robin, and you know, you'll get to see that. I would say the biggest difference is now I'm controlling the art from beginning to end, so I can actually, you know, the whole book's painted, which is, you know, I've done it before in Little Gotham, but this is the first time that I've done it on a, you know, this story is a little more serious, or a lot more serious, moodier, so it's not as lighthearted in, you know, the palette and stuff. It's not as funny, you know. So I'm using a different atmosphere throughout the whole book. That would be the biggest difference. Besides that, I mean, I'm very comfortable with the characters. That made it easy to come back. It's pretty simple. He just writes a story, and I'm like, hey, this reads great. And then I just draw it, and he's like, hey, this looks great. It's about as simple as you can get, and I think that's what I love about it, is because it's what I always felt, you know, creating comics should be before I broke into comics. You know, it's like you read a really cool story and you want to draw it, and then you draw it, and then, you know, people read it and they enjoy it. We talk very little about actual work. We usually just, you know, text each other, call for fun, and, you know, see how we're doing. But when it comes down to actual scripts, we just say, hey, what would be fun for, you know, me to draw and for him to write. And it comes down to it, and we both, you know, I trust him with a great story, and he trusts me with, you know, an art in return, and that's the process we have. It's pretty simple. It would be Killer Croc. I absolutely love drawing Killer Croc. He's as otherworldly as, like, by Gotham standards. You know, Gotham, we don't have too many. We have a lot of monsters, but a lot of monsters are just, you know, psychopaths and mentally monsters. Croc is one of those characters that crosses both sides. He's visually, like, very scary and just as crazy as all the other Gotham villains. But you also see, you know, the side of him that makes him that way. And I'm just excited to draw him, because when I drew him before in, you know, black and white, there was certain things I wanted to do with him, but I couldn't, because but now that I can control the art from, you know, from pencil to finished art, you know, there's a lot of textures to him, and layers, and just creating the entire atmosphere of what makes Killer Croc, you know, that's what I really, I was really digging into that.
I'll blow this town to smithereens! Time bombs! Try to get up there in time, Spider-Man!
Watch me cut my web, Goblin!
Watch yourself fall, Silk Slinger!
Gotta stop the bombs in time!
If I don't get you, webhead, my diagnoses will!
Holy Hannah!
And you're running out of fluid!
Is this more action than even Spider-Man could handle?
Spider-Man, a video game from Parker Brothers, the ones to beat.
The watch is broken, and that's why I'm writing it. A digital clock makes no sense to me. It sells the lie of a singular moment that doesn't exist. It's already gone. A proper watch lets you see the possibility of all time. That's the truth I know from more than a century of living. That's the reality of a world where I could step through a moonlit gate in Tokyo and onto a sun-washed beach in Rio. Times sideways, and times forwards, times backwards, and upside down. Logan. It's time.
They're offering me $25 million to find him and kill him. God help me.
It was the largest attack on Arkham Asylum they'd seen yet.
You think you're the predator, Jimbo?
And that I'm your prey? It started the world's largest manhunt, and Detective James Gordon was the right man for the job. From the same team that brought you Batman, Their Dark Designs, a cat and mouse story where nothing is quite what it seems.
I want everyone to think it was me, little me. This won't be my last laugh.
This time, it's different. What Gordon finds and what the Joker wants him to see will change everything.
You haven't solved the case yet, have you? Solved the case yet? It's on you! What's just this once? I didn't do it! I didn't do it!
Time is running out for both men, and they don't even know it.
The joke is on you. Wow! Jimbo. I didn't do it.
You'll find more than just comic books at House of Heroes. We also carry toys and collectibles from all your favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. Whether you're looking for a gift for someone special or just a gift for yourself, you'll find it at House of Heroes in downtown Oshkosh.
Bruce Wayne.
I'm sorry.
I wouldn't be bothering you here, but your people keep telling me you're unavailable. You know, you really could be doing more for this city. Your family has a history of philanthropy, but as far as I can tell, you're not doing anything.
Riddler is asking for you.
The killer left this for the Batman. Why is he writing to you? You came. I've been trying to reach you.
Riddler's latest. It's all about the Waynes. If we don't stand up, no one will.
You got a lot of cats.
I have a thing about strays. The bat and the cat. Got a nice ring.
You a new friend of yours?
I'm not so sure.
I'm just here to unmask the truth about this cesspool we call a city. You're part of this too.
Hey, stop! Stay still! How am I a part of this?
Oh, you're really not as smart as I thought you were. Bruce Wayne.
All these years, you lied to me, Alfred.
We all have our scars, Bruce. He's still a Wayne.
He's involved in this?
No, he's not involved.
How do you know? He's a vigilante!
Who are you under there? What are you hiding?
Selena, they'll throw your life away.
Don't worry, honey. I got 9 of them.
It can be cruel, poetic, or blind. But when it's denied, it's through violence you may find
justice. The answer's justice.
Come on, vengeance. Let's get into some trouble.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Boer, and you might know me from my previous books, maybe Kanto from IDW, or Killer Queens from Dark Horse, or maybe even I've written some Firefly for Boom. But I'm here today to talk to you about my brand new Image book, an adaptation of Joe Hill's wonderful novella, Rain, that first appeared in the collection Strange Weather in 2017. As you can see, I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of strategizing the best way to adapt Joe's absolutely amazing novella. So what is Rain about? It's a love story set during a very unique apocalypse. Honeysuckle Speck, I call her kind of a no-nonsense gay girl in cowboy boots. When she came out, her parents sort of rejected her, and she's lived on her own ever since then. That is until she met the love of her life, Yolanda Rusted. So one day, Yolanda's mom is driving Yolanda up to Boulder, Colorado to move in with Honeysuckle and start the next chapter of their lives together. And everything is wonderful until the dark clouds roll in over Boulder and the sky opens up. But instead of raining water, it rains crystal needles about the size of your thumb. For 8 minutes, 8,000 people across Boulder are shredded, are killed in this rain. That's 16 people a second. And unfortunately, Honeysuckle watches as Yolanda and her mom are among those victims. Sort of her world has collapsed around her. So Rain becomes a road story set during this spreading rain, crystal rain apocalypse, where Honeysuckle has to walk 30 miles to Denver to make sure the only person she still cares about, Yolanda's father, is still alive. It will appeal to folks who enjoyed Bird Box or A Quiet Place, the new wave of apocalyptic stories that are really based on character and really based on relationships and emotion. It's about love, loss, and what we do to move on and survive. The creative team is absolutely spectacular. Zoe Thorogood is such an up-and-coming talent. You're going to see a lot more from her. Chris O'Halloran is on colors, compliments Zoe's art just perfectly. And then Pitch Perfect letters are from Sean Lee. I am an enormous Joe Hill fan. Lock and Key is my favorite comic of all time. So I just poured my heart and soul into making this adaptation just something truly special. The final order cutoff is December 13th. I can't thank you enough. I know that you are the front line at comic shops. You are the ones who are talking up these books to readers and really getting the word out. So thank you. We will not disappoint you. This story is going to be just spectacular. So once again, thank you.
I sort of felt that I just wanted to tell like a night in the life of Batman, you know. What does a Monday night look like for Batman? But then when we hit on the idea of the blackout, that was when it was like, okay, that's the hook. It all came out of that simple idea that he's got to get from one side of Gotham to the other in total blackout with no support, like he's marooned, abandoned, and the entirety of Gotham is kind of trying to sort of get on top of him, disable him, take him out, take out EMP, our new villain. So yeah, it's a very simple concept, I guess, you know, but it all just happens within one evening. EMP is he feeds on energy, you know, so that can be electricity, it can be emotional energy, but he can't really control it. So he's been subdued in Arkham for years and years. They're basically transporting him from the old, maybe slightly outdated Arkham Asylum to the new facility, Blackgate Prison. So he's traveling in this kind of Faraday cage, which is like a box that keeps the energy kind of contained. But without giving too much away, things go wrong. He's a very volatile character, basically, and Batman having to get this guy from one side to the other, during this kind of crazy night is a challenge. It's a different muscle to flex for sure. You know, I've been lucky that I've worked with some of the best writers in comics, but yeah, this is something different, and it's definitely more challenging, but it's all the more rewarding for it. I find drawing the thumbnails is how I write the script, essentially. I write a little outline of what's going to occur in the issue, and then I basically get to doing the layout. So, and that's how I can figure out the pace and the rhythm and the size of the scenes and how they all fit together. I'm not sure I'm quite wired to sit down at a typewriter, you know, and literally write a sort of, you know, 30-page script and then sit down and draw it. Even though when that's what I receive from other writers, I feel like for this thing, it sort of suits my, you know, just the way I do things. That I sort of write it by drawing it, you know, and I edit it a lot and take stuff out and everything else, and I move pages around and panels around. But I'm essentially I'm much more comfortable telling the story visually. That's seemed to be the way that it's worked best for me. Yeah, I do love using black, and what better character is there to use black on than Batman? You know, I feel like so many times when I've drawn him, you sort of do quite a lot of underdrawing, and the more black you add, he tends to just look better and better and better until you're just left with that, you know, iconic silhouette that we all know, with the two piercing eyes. And as if he wasn't black enough, you know, I've called this book One Dark Night, and it's set during a blackout, so there's even more black in this book, which sounds like, you know, it could be easier, but it's actually super challenging to make that work in a really effective way. One page that remained exactly the same from the tiniest little thumbnail when I had the idea to the inks to the color, and it's, you know, in the very early stages of Batman chasing EMP across Gotham. It has a huge bat symbol kind of, you know, on City Hall. You know, it was one of those pages where I could see it immediately, and I'm pleased to say the final art kind of, you know, which is quite rare for me. I was kind of reasonably happy with it. So that was the page that really kind of summed up the initial kind of, you know, momentum of the story, and it was a lot of fun to draw. You know, the evening that it got announced, you know, I was sort of, you know, my phone was lit up for hours and hours and hours. It was you know, this is a story that's very dear to my heart, and I put so much into it. So to get that kind of response from, you know, hopefully people are looking forward to seeing the book, it was just, you know, the icing on the cake for me. I've spent the last year already on this story. I'm putting everything I've got into it, and I can't wait for everyone to see it.
Exploding from the pages of Spawn, America's #1 comic book. Spawn Ultra Action figures, blasting into combat with their mortal enemies. Spawnmobile versus Violator Monster Rig. Menacing Clown, Chapel, Badrock fights back. You can control the action in Spawn Alley with all of the Spawn Ultra Action figures. Figures, playsets, and vehicles, each sold separately. Spawn from Irwin.
think that Deathstroke, Slade Wilson, is a character you really should never root for. He's definitely a villain. You know, I think there's times where people have tried to play him as a hero or as anti-hero, but to me, he's always been a villain and like one of the best villains that DC has. And, you know, he's an enemy of the Teen Titans, and I think he's an enemy of literally legacy for the DCU. And I've always enjoyed writing villains, and I thought there was something to him that was kind of interesting. Like, you kind of look at what Christopher Priest did in the last run, where he was able to play around with all these ideas of who Deathstroke is. And I think the idea of somebody like Slade Wilson suddenly realizing one day, like, I'm a bad person, I think there's something interesting to that of like, what does that person do next? So Slade at the beginning of the story is very much struggling with who he is and what his role moving forward is. He doesn't believe that he is deserving of his family to be around them, but he also doesn't really know what the next steps he's going to take are. He's a little lost. And so when the secret organization called Trust comes to him and they say like, hey, we're going to basically give you money. We're going to pay you to save the world. And so they're coming to him with this. He's like, all right, I understand money. So I'm going to follow this. But in the process of that, the process of working with Trust and trying to quote unquote like save the world with them, it forces him to confront certain parts of himself. And again, it really takes him on this kind of dark journey. And it really makes him deal with the fact that like he's not a hero, regardless of what he wants to do, that is a fantasy and it's never going to happen. And so for him to sort of come to the conclusion that I'm a villain, he also realizes, well, if I'm going to be a villain, I'm going to be the best villain. Black Canary is like one of my favorite characters in the DCU. I've wanted to write them for a long time. They were almost in Robin at one point. And so we kept talking about what we wanted to do with her. And so when this book came up, and I needed someone to essentially be investigating Trust. And we started talking about Birds of Prey and Oracle. And I was, I think Oracle would totally send Black Canary on this mission. And so she plays a balance, like a counterbalance, a contrast with Deathstroke, right? Like Deathstroke is bad, she is good. She's able to tolerate working with Deathstroke because that's what the mission calls for. Like, she doesn't like him. They have a long history together. They were on Team 7 together. There were missions on Birds of Prey together, but they've fought against each other when she was in the Justice League, and they've had other encounters over the last few years, particularly that they do not get along. I've been a really big fan of Howard Porter's ever since he worked on The Ray with Christopher Priest, and he was on Underworld Unleashed with Mark Waid, and then he was on JLA with Grant Morrison, which is like one of the best Justice League books of all time. And I've always wanted to work with him. I was like, well, like Howard, why don't we try and do something together that is just really big, fun, action, bombastic, like really over the top, like muscle cars, very much this like action book with a lot of explosions in it, and Howard dived at it, and I think it's some of the best work Howard has ever done. They go up against this new version of the Hive, and Howard got to play around with some really creepy, weird horror stuff. We have this horrific moment where we see one of the villains, and it's the Hive King, and he has a hive for a head, and it's just super creepy and weird. And I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like Howard just really nailed it, and it all looks amazing. I think it's some of the best work Howard has done in years. In issue 1, we reveal that Deathstroke has access to all this bat tech now. And one of the things when we started talking about the opening was I was like, oh, Deathstroke's going to make this like dramatic opening. And either it could be with a motorcycle or a helicopter. Maybe he dives in, like skydives in. And I was like, no, he has all this Batman tech. He should totally drive the Batmobile in, because the idea of Deathstroke driving the Batmobile is so sacrilegious to me. And I know that if Batman was out, knew this was happening, he'd be so pissed off. And it felt so in character with Deathstroke to know, that him driving the Batmobile would piss off Batman. It just made it, extra fun. And so that was part of my thinking in that beginning sequence.